I'm a medical doctor. I was an internal medicine physician in the US, and then I went off and trained in aerospace medicine, and I came to NASA at the Johnson Space Center in 1991. And I worked there as a flight surgeon medical officer until the year 2000, where I was fortunate enough to be selected to the astronaut corps and have been an active astronaut MD since that time. You know, a lot of my friends knew that they wanted to be astronauts by the time they were 5 years old. I think I was 35, actually, so it's never too late. But sure, I loved oceanography and marine biology and astronomy, and I was building telescopes and building small submersible vehicles for mice when I was a teenager, and just always loved to camp and travel and climb and be on or under the water. So I guess it ended up being a natural fit with my medical degree. Human spaceflight is expanding and has the potential to expand exponentially within the next very few years. There'll be a lot more physicians involved in caring for people who are preparing to fly or returning from flight. So the hands-on practice will expand quite a bit. Probably the biggest aspect of space medicine is that once you put the body in space, you end up with a very different creature. The body has a response to weightlessness in particular that changes almost every system, every physiologic system. So that after a period of adaptation, you become essentially an extraterrestrial. Your heart changes shape and size, your vascular system changes, you lose plasma volume, red blood cells, your neurovestibular system changes to adapt you to become a three-dimensional creature. You start losing bone and muscle, accumulating effects of radiation, and there's many other changes that happen. So basically you are now an alien, but naturally adapted to the weightless environment. So everything you know about diagnosis and treatment has to be metered against what you know is that adaptive response. And of course that adaptive response is fine when you're in zero gravity for the most part, but it can bite you when you want to come back to Earth. So protecting people during flight and preparing them to return to Earth, I think, is the most fascinating aspects. The other interesting thing is that, as I mentioned, the human body is very different in space, but when you get away from the dominant effects of gravity, you find things about basic human physiology that you otherwise could not discover on the ground unless you were deliberately looking for it. So we actually are making basic physiologic discoveries that are enabled just by being in weightlessness. These include regulation of central venous pressure, regulation of cerebrospinal fluid circulation, venous drainage from the head, how the heart remodels, how to maintain bone and muscle, the right loads to target these postural joints, which become a problem on Earth as well. For instance, elderly populations with osteoporosis. So the benefits are everything from basic physiologic discovery to new modes of treatment. Okay, the conference is Extreme Medicine, which I think defines space medicine extremely well. There's just a lot of intersections between what we do in the space world and everything these people do: expeditionary medicine, diving medicine, high altitude, desert climates, physical endurance, humanitarianism. I mean, all of these things have intersections with human spaceflight, and I actually learn tremendously from these people. So in my mind, extreme medicine is the human performance support needed to take the human out of their comfort zone and to move them into a very worthwhile forward direction. There's all sorts of crazy places you can go that you should not go, but there are crazy places that we could go that move us forward as individuals, as civilizations, whether it's climbing Mount Everest or moving the civilization forward by expanding out into space. All of these are extreme motions of civilization or individuals, and they obviously require a lot more attention to human health and performance. So in my mind, it's a very easy intersection between this community and the spaceflight community. One of the wonderful things about this community, in fact, is that aside from the forward thinking, these are people with passions and convictions that act on them in very committed ways. And to me, it's a very comfortable community to be in, because I think that characterizes all of those of us who work in human spaceflight. As far as inspiration, I certainly get inspired by this crowd. A lot of people talk about how wonderful it would be to have such adventures. These people have been to these places and have demonstrated that you can really push the human further than most people think. That includes the individual and the society, I think. So I think that's where my inspiration comes, is the action these people take and what this community has really demonstrated. You don't have to be an Einstein or a super elite athlete to move out of your comfort zone and discover something wonderful, a new world or a new environment that you hadn't considered before that is just awe-inspiring to you. So that if you hear these tales of daring do and adventures from others, don't put a barrier between yourself and those people. There's nothing that you can't do yourself if you really put your mind to it. The common factor here is really more determination than brute force brilliance, intelligence, or human performance.